Breath of the Wild is famous for its extreme landscapes, especially its mountains. However, the harsh truth is that Hyrule's mountaintops are really tiny. To prove this, we're going to be using a fancy little tool called the Breath of the Wild Memory Editor. You might recall that we used this in our video about building a castle on the Great Plateau, since it can be used to spawn objects like metal boxes. Well, turns out it has another purpose. It can track the player's position on the map, which we can use to find the heights of all the mountains in the game. But first, we have to figure out what these numbers represent. Are they feet, inches, centimeters? Thankfully, the answer is pretty easy to find. By going to the top of the Ridgeland Tower, we can play a minigame which uses the real-world measurement of meters. All we need to do is find out how long a unit in the memory editor is compared to the meters shown in this minigame. Using some hacks, I cheated the parasailing game and traveled as far as I could before running into a hillside. My final distance in the minigame was 4,557.5 meters, and according to the memory editor, I traveled 4,562 units. When we divide these two, it turns out that the parasailing minigame and the memory editor are using the exact same measurements, meters. It's a little bit off, but we can chalk that up to human error. For all intents and purposes, 1 unit in the memory editor is equal to 1 real-life meter. With this information in hand, figuring out the size of the mountains in Hyrule is going to be a cinch. By the way, if you want to like the video, this would be the best time to do it right before we get into the numbers. Alright, no more dilly-dallying. Let's see what we're working with. Here's the list of the most iconic mountains in the game, starting with the tallest and working our way down to the shortest. It was surprisingly easy to figure out. All I had to do was go to the tops of each mountain, check the elevation, go to the bottoms of each mountain, check the elevation again, and then subtract the two numbers to figure out how high each mountain is. As you can see, Death Mountain has the biggest height by a long shot with 876.1 meters. As a side note, it also has the highest elevation in all of Hyrule with 896 meters above sea level. Then, at the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the tiny Mount Hylia, which is only 171 meters tall. Lastly, I got the height of the Sheikah Tower on the Great Plateau. It is 67.5 meters tall. I also tried getting the height of the platform in the fight against Mascotia, but that's loaded on a different map than the rest of Hyrule, so that won't be possible to figure out. Alrighty then, these are some pretty impressive numbers, right? Or are they? How about I put these numbers into perspective for you? Then you'll see why the validity of Hyrule's mountains, in quotes, is in question. The Empire State Building, which is much taller than many of the smaller mountain ranges in Hyrule, is 443 meters tall. The Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world right now, is 829 meters tall. The infamous Mount Vesuvius is 1,281 meters tall, already taller than the highest point in Hyrule. The gorgeous Mount Fuji is 3,778 meters tall. And, need I mention, Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world, is 8,848 meters tall. It probably comes as no surprise to anybody to learn that Nintendo had to use smaller mountains so that they would fit on the map of Hyrule. If they had used real-world mountain sizes, it's possible that a single mountain would have taken up the entire map. But this creates an unfortunate problem when we realize that many of the mountains in the game don't qualify as mountains. Widow's Dictionary of Physical Geography claims that a mountain must be at least 600 meters tall to meet the standards of being a mountain. Otherwise, it's just a hill. And in Ireland and the UK, a mountain has to be 610 meters tall to meet the requirements. With stringent definitions like these, none of Breath of the Wild's supposed mountains would actually be mountains. The only exception would be Death Mountain. And no, the Gerudo Highlands would not count, since they have a flat summit. That makes it a plateau. But hold on a minute, there might be some hope for the mountains in Hyrule still. Even though the UK, Ireland, and Widow use a measurement of 600 meters or 610 meters, there are some places in the world which are much more generous. For instance, the UN Environmental Program has multiple ways for a rock pile to qualify as a mountain. Most important for us, it says that as long as the ground rises above a height of 300 meters within a 7-kilometer range, it counts as a mountain. So, according to the UN, all these mountains on our list are mountains. Well, besides Mount Hylia. Elsewhere, the United States Geographical Survey doesn't even bother defining what a mountain is. Instead, they leave it to local interpretation. So, if the Bokoblins of the Great Plateau wanted to call Mount Hylia a mountain, even though it's only 171 meters tall, then gosh darn it, according to the US, those patriotic sons of guns can do that. At the end of the day, there's no unified answer as to what makes a mountain or a hill a hill. There's only one thing we can be sure of. As long as there's a mound of dirt in Hyrule, the player's going to want to explore it. To learn about how Tetra from the Wind Waker was named after a fish, click here. Or to see me rank every single region in Breath of the Wild, click here. Thanks to Greek Myth Dude for inspiring this video with your question about what is the lowest and highest place in Hyrule. We might not have answered the full question, but we'll get there one day.